Joining us live here in Kyiv to discuss Republican Senator Steve Daines of Montana. He's the first U.S. Senator on the ground here in Kyiv, and he has just returned from a tour of Bucha, where Russians allegedly left behind mass graves of Ukrainians as well as bodies in the street. Senator, thanks so much for being here. So the top prosecutor for the International Criminal Court, he visited Bucha and Borodnik as well, and he says Ukraine is a crime scene. Do you agree?
I completely agree. What we saw today was shocking. It was numbing. You know, we're parents of 4 children. We have 3 grandchildren. To see these shallow graves and to watch these investigators who are with shovels digging, shovelful by shovelful, extracting these bodies, the bodies of women, of small children, civilians across the board. It's mind-numbing. It's terrible. And we were there, in fact, looking as they're excavating taking these bodies out. You could see the rubble, like an earthquake. It destroyed these residential neighborhoods. We met with the mayor of Bucha today. He said, "Senator, can I show you my home?" Mm-hmm. So we followed him to his home, completely destroyed by the Russians.
And you have some photographs you took of the mass graves. I'm going to put those up during your trip to Bucha. And we, as always, we want to warn our viewers, they're upsetting to see. So let's, what do you tell us what you're looking at when we're looking at these photos?
So this is the site there in Bucha where they were excavating and taking shovel by shovel the bodies out. You can see the black bags that the bodies were in. And then they would open up the bags. The stench was horrific. And then they would take these bodies back to the tents that you saw there, and they were basically doing autopsies, forensic examinations. There, I'm covering my nose. I mean, the stench was terrible, the smell of death. It's a very quiet and somber scene. It's sitting right next to a church, which just kind of adds to just the whole perspective of what we're seeing there.
Yeah, the Sabbathary.
It really is.
What Vladimir Putin's out there, and his minions throughout the world, and pro-Putin propaganda, saying this is all fake. You were there.
The truth is what was just shown around the world on CNN.
Yeah.
And that was why it was so important to have American officials come to Ukraine, come to Kyiv. And I had dinner just minutes ago, Jake, with a Ukrainian military leader. And I asked him, I said, what we saw in Bucha today, what's going on like Bucha around Ukraine? Just as you said, Jake, Ukraine is one great big crime scene. Yeah. This is going on in Mariupol as we speak.
Yeah, at probably a much, much bigger scale.
It is. I mean, when the history is written about what's happened here in Ukraine, it's going to be a terrible, terrible story. And let's not forget, the Ukrainians sent a very strong message today as I was going through the devastation. They said, these war crimes will not end until this war ends.
Right.
This war will not end until the Ukrainians have the lethal aid they need to defeat the Russians.
Well, let's talk about that because President Biden just approved another $800 million. It's been about $3 billion total. What are your concerns about it getting here fast enough? Because obviously, logistically, it's difficult to get helicopters, et cetera, to a place from around the world.
Well, we need to speed up the cadence at which that lethal aid is made available and then delivered to the Ukrainians. There's a couple places that the lethal aid is coming in. We've got to speed that up. We also need to make sure that we are listening to the Ukrainians in terms of what they need. I met with leaders here today. They said they need heavy artillery, 155 mm howitzers. That's what they need. They need the heavy armor.
I think they're getting the howitzers, right?
Well, we've got to talk about how many they need as well.
Right.
But they've got to get them here quickly because, as you know, as you watch that battle map we just looked at here minutes ago, the Russians are on the move. They're now down on a part of Ukraine where they have a better territorial advantage than they had when the Ukrainians defeated them north of Kyiv here because they had better battleground. The territory is not as friendly for the Ukrainians down south. That's why we need to accelerate this lethal aid.
President Biden called this genocide the other day. He said that wasn't a legal ruling. It was his opinion, but he thought it was pretty obvious. Do you agree?
I'd say what I saw were it was atrocities. There are war crimes. At this point, I'm not sure we need to get involved in definitions. This is a terrible, terrible situation. These are war crimes. It's irrefutable. These are war crimes. They need to be prosecuted, and Vladimir Putin and those who committed these crimes need to be held accountable.
Republican Senator Steve Daines of Montana, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
So many